All right, welcome back, everyone. Today I got a special guest, Paul Marsnik. He's a business professor at the College of Saint Benedict and St. John's University in central Minnesota, my alma mater, and my former professor 25 years ago. So, Paul, welcome. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me, Vin. I have to say this is my first podcast, so thanks for having me.
Okay, you're doing fine so far. No worries. All right, Paul, maybe I know you're alumni from St. John's too, and I know you grew up in the Twin Cities. Maybe you can help me understand as a teen and then how you ended up at St. John's. What was that journey like, and who influenced you, and etc.
Okay, yeah, I grew up in the Twin Cities area, northern suburb Fridley, and graduated from Fridley High School in 1977. And back then, people didn't spend as much time researching multiple schools. So it was time to go to college. My mom had gone to St. Benedict, College of Saint Benedict, and she said, hey, you should think about going to St. John's. So I applied, got in, and my first time setting foot on the campus was in the summer when you went to register for classes or something like that. So it wasn't a real deep decision. But anyway, I ended up at St. John's and spent 4 years there, probably four of the funnest years of my life. I really enjoyed it. I wasn't a super committed student. I was more into having a good time with my buddies, but I managed to get through and get a degree in business administration, and I guess the rest was history.
Yeah, and then that led to obviously more study. I think you were in Nebraska for your master's or your PhD or something like that, and then you came back to St. John. So, what was that journey like?
Yeah, that journey, it's, I think Steve Jobs said it best when he was maybe doing a commencement speech at Stanford. He said, you can't connect the dots of your life looking forward, and that certainly is the case with me. So after finishing at St. John's in 1981, it was a really bad recession, and even the good students were having a really hard time getting jobs. So my prospects were not strong. So I and a couple of Johnny buddies started a business. We called it Quality Contractors, and we were going to do painting and carpentry and masonry. And so we launched this business, and we found that the name Quality Contractors was taken, so we became QC Contractors. Those guys lasted about a year, went to law school, so that the business was mine. The business was nothing more than a old beat-up pickup truck and some tools. And so I slowly built that into a legitimate business. I got married to my wife, Jamie, along the way. She became actually the president of the company. So she would run the company out of an office in our home, and I was out in the field building houses. So it sort of evolved into a custom home building business called Marsnik Construction. But after about 10 years, maybe after about 9 years, Jamie said, hey, Paul, is there anything else you'd rather do for a living? And I kind of thought she was joking. But just to humor her, I said, well, I suppose I'd like to be an announcer for the Minnesota Twins, baseball or, TV or radio, doesn't matter. And that, wasn't going to happen. But the other thing, I don't even know where it came from. I said, I'd like to be a college professor. And
Is that right?
yeah. And so this is, of course, before internet or anything. So Jamie, she's still to this day is a great researcher, digger of information, that sort of thing. And she went to work at the library, literally at the library, and came back one evening and said, all right, Paul, here's the deal. If you wanted to be a college professor, you'd have to get a PhD. And in order to get a PhD, you'd have to take the GMAT test, and you'd have to score really high on that because your GPA is so poor. I think my GPA was 2.78, something like that. Mm-hmm. And so just for kicks, I thought I'd take the GMAT test, and I took it, and I scored well enough to where some schools might accept me into their PhD program. So I got in at Nebraska and we liquidated the business, packed up our two little boys that were in diapers at the time, and and headed off to Lincoln, Nebraska, and lived there for 3 years. I got a PhD. Jamie finished her undergrad. And then a job at my old alma mater opened up in the business department, and so I've been a business professor for 30, going on 31 years now.
Wow, that is amazing. And I remember, I think it was fall of 97. I graduated in 98, but I think I took your org and behavior course.
Yeah, organizational behavior. That's what my PhD was in. Yeah.
Yes. And then it was Engel Hall. I think it was second floor. We were all looking forward, anxious, because here's this Johnny alum, graduated from our schools and is coming back to teach. And then you walk in, clean cut, good looking guy, So it was really neat to see you and then to have you. And I enjoyed the course. I remember all good things. I don't think I've ever had a bad course at St. John's. Never. It's always been great professors, good discussions. Always learned. Had a good experience there. So
I
and you
think
were
it's
up
still
there
that
too.
way. Good people there, and I always say what makes my job really a fun job is the students, the type of students that go there. It seems like they come from generally, good families, in a lot of cases, entrepreneurial families, and it just makes a huge difference. You're just working with really excellent people and helping them to become hopefully better human beings.
Oh, isn't that the truth? Yeah, we had the same discussion with King Chuck prior to this, and same. I've always impressed with all the Johnnies and Bennies I meet. Just they're so well rounded. They're good people, good values, and they want to do good in the world. I've met the opposite. You get these Ivy Leaguers, East Coast schools, and then I don't know that something I just don't connect with them as well, and they have more of an ego issue, and they have other things. But yeah, the Johnnies and Bennies are always well rounded, and then even the relationships I build with professors. I talk to you 25 years later, you're still in my orbit. You're still someone that I can count on. I can talk to. So it's amazing in that way too.
Yeah, it really is.
All right, so I believe when I was there, it was a management degree. Now it's a global business, and then I also see that you're part of the McNeely leadership or entrepreneurial, and then maybe you can talk a little bit about that, and then we'll lead into the e-scholars and how you got involved and what that is.
Okay, yeah. I started in 94. So when you had me for class, I was, wet behind the ears, couple, second or third year teaching. And, but I started in 94 and I was hired into the management department, which years later, after a program review, turned into the Department of Global Business Leadership, which is what it is now. And so in my first 10 years, I was teaching, full-time professor of management. I was teaching org behavior, the course that you took from me, intro to management. And actually, it's to me, kind of a funny story. When I was hired, they said the position was primarily teaching finance in this business department and then teaching other courses like intro to management and so on. And I was really nervous about teaching finance. I built the case that I ran my own business and did the books and did all the financials for the business and that sort of thing. And so I guess that was good enough for me to get the job. But I was going to spend all summer gearing up to teach finance courses. And so I had textbooks and I had a schedule. I was going to do a chapter every week or something like that. And so I was just getting ready to dive into that when the chair of the department, Ginny Arthur, called me and said, "Hey, Paul, there's been a change. Somebody retired, and this was the guy that was teaching our entrepreneurship class. Would you be interested in teaching entrepreneurship instead of finance?" And hearing that, I just about jumped through the ceiling, with joy at the prospect of teaching entrepreneurship instead
Right.
of finance. So I was out of the finance thing. So what that meant, the entrepreneurship part, was just one class every year, one standalone class called Entrepreneurship, Management 304. And I loved teaching that class, because it brought me back to my 10 years of launching and running a business. And the way I set it up was the students would generate ideas, pick an idea, and then do a business plan on a venture that they could launch. And it was a fun class, and the students enjoyed it. And they would give a business plan presentation at the end. And after 10 years of doing this, I did a little assessment. One of the measures I looked at is how many of the students that wrote a business plan in my class actually launched the venture, right? So I had about 220 students that had taken the course over 10 years. I'll ask you, Vin, like I ask everybody, how many of them out of 220, how many do you think actually launched a venture?
Ooh, I would say out of 210,
220.
220. Oh man, maybe 40, 50.
One. One
Oh
guy
my gosh, are you
aware
serious?
of it. And I remember, I'll never forget the guy. And he still got the business going. He went by the name of Tex. He wore a cowboy hat. And he started a business installing invisible fences for dogs, underground fences. And then invisible fences and a kennel boarding facility in the Brainerd Lakes area. And he's still doing it, killing it up there with his business. But so that was cool. But one out of 220, if that's your measure of success, I'm not doing very well. Now the students were learning and all that, but
Yeah.
I just said there has to be a better way, and that was the seed, if you will, of this idea of e-scholars, a different way of doing entrepreneurship education.
I see. So that's how e-scholars came about.
Yep.
And you talked a little bit more about e-scholars, what that involves, and where you guys go, that thing.
Yeah. Okay. So now you imagine I'm 10 years in. I'm a little bit more experienced as a professor, but not that much. And so the vision is, instead of one standalone course, it will be a program where students take 3 courses over 3 consecutive semesters. It will be completely outside the Department of Business or Management. It will be available to students from any major, because I believe back then, and still do, that entrepreneurs come from all walks of life,
Yes, that's true.
artists and musicians and computer science people and history people and on and on and on. So eScholars is available to any student. We design the courses so that you're starting from day one. You don't have any prerequisites or anything like that. But the expectations are going to be really high. If you get into this program, the expectation is that you're going to launch a venture before you graduate. So I
Oh wow.
posed this to the people at St. Ben's and St. John's, the administrators, and they're like, Paul, you're crazy, man. It's like, you can't expect undergrad college students, full-time undergrad college students, to launch a venture before they graduate. They don't have the knowledge, they don't have the experience, they don't have the time, and I more or less just said, just watch me, give me a chance. And so here we are 20 years later, and it's kind of interesting because the number is similar. I've had 220 some students go through the eScholar program in 20 years, and we've had over 60 successful launches. So
Wow.
I bumped up the percentage a little bit by doing this program. So yeah, it's one of the things that I'm proud of, and I would say but that we've made happen at St. Ben's and St. John's.
Yeah, that's amazing. I know one of that component is that field study, going abroad. I know in the last few years you've gone to Vietnam, and I know you plan in 2025 to do the same thing. So what's that component like? What countries have you visited in the past, and then why Vietnam?
Yeah. So we're going back to 2004 when the first group of e-scholars started. And I told them, you're expected to launch a venture, and we're going to do a significant international travel experience. Because I just believed that was an important thing, to have that kind of perspective. And you have to understand, Vin, that it was not because at that point in my life I had a lot of travel experience. I didn't study abroad as a student. You studied abroad, didn't you?
Yeah, I did France actually.
You were in France, yeah. And I had friends who studied abroad, and in retrospect, that was one of the few regrets that I had
Yeah.
about my education at St. John's, St. Ben's, is that I didn't study abroad. But I did have the opportunity with my wife and two boys to direct the Australia study abroad program in
Oh,
2001. And so I kind of got a taste, Australia's far, far away, but it's
yeah.
not culturally that much difference, like
Right.
compared to Vietnam or China or something like that. But anyway, that was sort of what got me thinking. It's like I want these students to be sort of have the experience of going to a very different place and being out of their comfort zone. So the first year, with a lot of help from my colleague John Hasselberg, he was directing a short-term study abroad program to China.
Mm-hmm.
He said, Paul, you told these scholars you're going to take them somewhere globally. Why didn't you tag along with me and my 12 short-term study abroad students and go to China? And I was like, it didn't take much convincing. It's like, yeah, I'm in.
Wow.
So our first group went there, and in many respects, Vin, it was a total shit show. I mean, everything that could go wrong did go wrong.
Oh,
And this is from my perspective as a guy who hadn't traveled that much, and when the travel that I did was to Australia. I don't understand the language, and everything just seemed like total chaos
oh,
to me. And in the middle of the 2 week experience, I'm sure I was thinking, I got to rethink this whole thing, because this just is not where students were getting lost, and it was like hot and uncomfortable and everything. And but after returning, maybe a week or two, it sort of hit me. It's like, that was really cool. That
uh-huh.
was what I and the students experienced there. While chaotic and bizarre and uncomfortable, it was really cool. And I was like, I want to do that again. And
Mm,
this second time around, it'll be a lot better, because I've
mm-hmm.
got a little bit of knowledge. And the second one was better, and the third one was better. And we just kept going back to China. It would be 2 weeks. That first trip was in May, and then it evolved into the trips were in the winter. That worked better over our winter break. So we'd leave a day or two after Christmas and come back a day or two before the semester would start, and that would give us 2 weeks. So it was, for 15 years, it was China. And
Wow.
then COVID happened. We had to skip a full year. One group didn't get to travel at all. And then the next group, we went to Eastern Europe. Eastern Europe was cool, but it just wasn't the same kind of out of comfort zone experience as going to Asia. So then we went to Vietnam a few years ago and got a lot of help from you and other people on the ground in Saigon and Da Nang. And I've kind of fallen in love with Vietnam as a destination. It gets the students far out of their comfort zone. And there's a lot of really interesting and cool entrepreneurial stuff happening in that country.
Yeah, I commend you for continuing to the Vietnam program because I think it has embodies everything you'd want in terms of entrepreneurship, and it's so different as you mentioned because most of these students most likely won't set foot in Asia. They'll start their careers, their families, and then when they think back of yeah, I was in Vietnam for that segment, and it was so different. I learned this and that, and opened my mind, and then nowadays Vietnam is a front page news in terms of tariffs and then manufacturing and the rise in the Southeast Asia, and so it embodies all of that, and it's just a beautiful country, and so you're really shattering and breaking stereotypes. So I think it's amazing that you guys continue, and I really support that. So that's great to see.
Yeah, and as every year, I'm getting excited about the trip. The students are expected to set up and execute visits. So we just had class yesterday, and I found out one of the students, Joe Wadle is his name, he's secured a visit to a Minnesota company, Cargill, and the
Oh,
visit is going to be to a plant where they're processing animal feet of some
oh,
sort. So, I
sure,
mean,
yeah,
that's just going to be, those visits are, as you know, I mean, it's just like for students who not only have, some of them have never been outside the U.S., and most of them have never been in a factory before, let alone a
Right.
factory in Vietnam processing animal feed. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's going to be really cool.
Yeah, maybe you want to touch upon a little bit of the curriculum, what you guys will be doing. I know in the past you guys have had that scavenger hunt. There are some alumni that come through and maybe have some meals with you. Maybe you can talk about some of the places or that you've been in the past or and plan to go to. Maybe.
Yeah, so this year we're doing a week in Saigon, also known as Ho Chi Minh City, and then a week in Da Nang. And so we'll leave on a Friday the 4th. We'll arrive on late on Sunday the 5th in Ho Chi Minh City. Hopefully check into our hotel, get settled in, and then Sunday's kind of our rest and relaxation day, get situated, and then Monday we'll have a scavenger hunt. This is something that's kind of morphed over the years into a really important part of the experience for the students. So on Monday morning, we'll eat breakfast at the hotel. I'll put them in teams, probably you know, 2 teams of 3 and 1 team of 4, something like that. And they will have a pretty ambitious set of things that they need to do. A lot of them are touristy kind of things. Go to what's the name of that market in Saigon?
Um,
Bin Tian?
Benton
Benton.
Market.
Go to Benton Market and do the following things there and barter with somebody or whatever and get a video of it
Hmm.
and there's a brand new subway that's just opening up in December.
Yes.
That'll be on the scavenger hunt.
Oh,
Get on the
nice.
subway and ride it. I understand that it's going to be free to ride for the first 30 days, and we'll be there in that
Oh,
little window.
perfect.
So that'll be one of the things. And I just find some little out of the way back alley places where they make noodles or something like that. So but by the time the scavenger hunt will wrap up at 4, and then we'll have a group dinner. But before the dinner, each scavenger hunt team will give their presentation on what they did, and you can see it's a different group of young people at 4 o'clock in the evening after the scavenger hunt than it was at 10 a.m. when they left to go out on their journey. It's like in 6 hours they transform into sort of, I'm scared, I don't know what to do, to what, I can do this, I can
Yeah.
get around. I don't speak the language, but there's plenty of people who speak my language, and this is going to be fun. They're excited, and so that's the really important part at the front end, and then after that, it's the students have set up visits, and so like this year Tuesday, a bunch of the students will be going with Joe to the Cargill animal foot processing thing, and the next day Tanaya has a visit. I don't remember where it is, but there will be visits every day, and it'll be 3 or 4 or the whole group of students going to the visits. Sometimes I'll tag along, sometimes I'll just stay back and do my own thing. And then so a week in Saigon, and then on Saturday we fly to Da Nang, and same thing all over again. We do have one full group visit with a Johnny alum, uh, Vietnamese guy named Long Nguyen, who
Oh, yeah.
started a business. Do you know Long?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's fitness thing. I forgot. Yeah.
Everfit.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
his customers are fitness trainers.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got a big staff and a beautiful office space in Da Nang. Bunch of Vietnamese people that are cranking out good stuff for him. So they've agreed to host us for a full group meeting at the Everfit
Oh,
Da Nang headquarters. So that'll be fun.
that is so exciting, man. If I were a student and I had this schedule and curriculum up before me, I would have gone bonkers. This is so
Yeah.
exciting. This would have been the highlight of my career, college career. So that's great. Oh, good. That sounds wonderful, and I look forward to helping you out in any way there. I know in the past I've written with the guidebooks or putting you in touch with people or suggestion places. So definitely looking forward to that. Maybe we can switch gears, go more on your personal side. I know you wrote a book about baseball, and I know you travel the country. Tell me a little bit more about this hobby or this passion of yours.
Yeah, well, I saw in your notes of questions you were going to ask me that you were going to mention the book, so I got a copy here. It's called
There it
Baseball
is.
Trip. And there you
Okay.
can see this is an artist rendering on the cover, but that's what we traveled around in. We call it a bago. It's a motorhome, and these are some of the guys. So
Neat.
yeah, that's just been uh, a really cool thing. So it started in 1987. A bunch of most of us were baseball fans since kids, and so
Did you
we
play
were
baseball at
watching.
St. John's?
No, I didn't. I never played beyond high school.
Oh, okay, but that you just have a passion or interest in
Just
baseball.
a
Okay.
passion for the game, love the game, and big Twins fan and all that. But so the baseball road trip, the book I wrote is a novel based on a true story. Okay, and the true story is my Johnny buddies and myself. The first year of the baseball road trip was 1987. So we were in our late 20s at the time, out of school. And I was, building houses, and everybody was at sort of, 5 years into a job kind of a thing. Not married yet, most of us. Some had girlfriends, some not. But it was, we're gonna rent a motorhome, and that came from our days. I hung out a lot with the rugby players. I don't want to say I played rugby. Were you a rugby player, Vin?
No, no, not at
No.
all.
You look like you could be a good rugby player.
Nowadays, I was scrawny back then.
Yeah, I was too, and I didn't like getting hit, so the game of rugby wasn't for me, but the culture of rugby was definitely for me. They
Okay.
were they liked to have a good time. They knew how to throw a good party. And the parties after the games would always include the other team, which was really cool. It's a very sort of a camaraderie thing. And so I was in and the rugby team would take motorhomes and go down to New Orleans for a rugby tournament every year. And on my senior year, I got to go on that, and I was like, "This is so cool!" I mean,
Wow.
traveling around the country in a motorhome with your friends. And
Yeah.
so 5 or so years out, we're like, let's. We're watching games, the Twins play in the Metrodome, and it's like this is not how baseball was meant to be. It's an outdoor game that's played in the beautiful summer evenings and stuff like that. So we said, let's get a motorhome and let's do a baseball road trip. So we watched one game in Kansas City, and then St. Louis, and then Comiskey Park in Chicago, and then Wrigley Field in Chicago, and then Milwaukee County Stadium, and then back. So it was like six baseball games in 5 days, and the whole experience of going to bars beforehand and after, and the whole thing. So the book is about that first year, and like I say, it's a novel based on a true story, and it had to be a novel for a couple reasons. One, I didn't want to implicate any of my buddies on some of these stories, and number two, it's like if it was going to be a memoir or based on fact, it's like none of us really remember the details that well, So I was able to, as a novel, I'm able to make stuff up, but a lot of it's true, a lot of the things in the book actually did happen. So the book is just sort of, we would always say, somebody should write a book about this, because this past summer we just had baseball road trip. We call it BRT number 38. So we've been doing this thing every summer for 38 years, and we've been to every single
Wow.
ballpark that exists, all 30 of them.
Oh
Uh,
my.
and we've been to, I think, 22 or 23 that don't exist anymore, like
Oh,
old Tiger Stadium, old Yankee Stadium,
is
and a
that right?
bunch of other ones, yeah.
Wow, what an incredible story. I had no idea about that. And I think I found it on your Facebook page or something like that. But yeah, I didn't know you had an interest in that.
Yeah, and it kind of connects back. It was, again, that sort of you can't connect the dots. When I think about my travels with the e-scholars,
Yeah.
in a strange way, that's influenced by my travels with my St. John's buddies over the years.
Is
It's
that
just this
right?
sort of pushing out of your comfort zone and doing things, and even some of the terms, like we hatched the term. You might remember this from one or more of the groups that I went to Vietnam with. Is like, do you remember the term amoeba? The amoeba?
Yeah, I do.
That started on the baseball trip. The amoeba is a group of people traveling together, and it sometimes it separates, and one person goes off, and they come back, and sometimes new people join the amoeba. And so I don't know that the students are necessarily aware of that, but that emerged on maybe baseball road trip number 10 or something like that. Somebody hatched the term amoeba, and it kind of stuck.
Nice. Very neat.
Yeah.
Well, that's great experience. They have the baseball and your buddies, and then traveling the U.S. and then kind of translate that with the e-scholars or with the international component and bring it all together in the classroom. So that's really, really cool that what you got going on there. Very nice.
Yeah,
All right.
it's been a good ride.
All right. Before we head out, do you want to talk about some of your upcoming projects or events that you got your hand in, or you want people to know about, or something you're working on?
Well, I suppose one of the things I'm really excited about these days is, after 20 years of running this e-scholars program for really go-getter entrepreneurial students, after a couple years of hard work, we finally got pushed through an entrepreneurship minor at St. Ben's and St. John's. So
Oh,
now
congrats.
we're gonna be able to make the experience. It's not going to be, if you minor in entrepreneurship, it's going to be a really powerful thing. Build an entrepreneurial mindset, and have that sort of way of seeing the world that like everybody's looking for now. Somebody who sees opportunities and can make things happen, and somebody who's bold and not afraid to fail, and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, we're still going to keep rocking and rolling with the e-scholars program, but now we'll have a program that can help build this mindset in a whole bunch of other young people as well.
Okay, great to hear. Well, Paul, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to connect with you and to hear the latest and what's happening on campus and what you got going on. So thank you very much.
Okay, it's always a pleasure chatting with you, Vin.
Okay, hope to see you up in Minnesota sooner than later.
Okay, yeah, for sure.